There are people out there right now who are starting businesses.
Absolutely.
We know exactly what that feels like.
You're right in front of them, so it's like having a billboard that you're actually putting right in front of somebody's face.
When you're considering adding corporate apparel to your brand, these are some things that you should consider.
A lot of website companies, they build it and then they have the ownership of it and then you don't. You want to own your website.
Welcome to the Marketing Compass podcast. As we navigate you through the world of marketing and advertising, we're excited that you're here with us today. We're jumping on here with a couple newer faces to the podcast. They haven't been on the show yet, and we're excited for this. Today, we're going to talk with Abigail and Drew about digital marketing, specifically about content generation, content writing, kind of the creative process that goes into our planning and scheduling of mostly digital marketing content, but as we'll discover through our conversation of how it really kind of overflows into a lot of different components of your everyday marketing. But before we jump into that conversation, I would like to give you guys the opportunity just to kind of share a little bit about who you are. Share your name, where you're from. You both recently graduated from college, so share a little bit about that experience there. And then maybe what you guys do as a hobby at home. Abigail, you want to start us?
Sure. My name is Abigail 𝐶. I recently graduated from Indiana Wesleyan University. My field of study was illustration, and what that really is there is a very heavy visual component to that, but primarily that revolves around narrative and visual narrative, producing something that, while visual in nature, is a story. So that was really my field of study. Storytelling is my passion.
Yeah.
And I've had the opportunity to produce a lot of my own original work throughout that time. I'm working on a graphic novel right now. And I've also had some experience in the video game industry, working on mods and doing narrative development there.
That's awesome. Yeah, how long have you been working on your graphic novel?
Yeah, that's the story started back when I was in middle school, so it's been almost 8 years now. But really the visual nature of it and the visual style of it didn't start finding its footing until about my sophomore year, so 2 years ago. Yeah.
Awesome. So Drew, tell us about who you are.
Okay, my name is Drew 𝐤𝐤. I'm the son of Wes 𝐤𝐤, who is the boss around here.
Yeah. Does that mean it's a cakewalk for you, or
no? I wish.
No, I was told to make it really hard on him.
Yeah. I just graduated from Grace College with a master's in business. I got an associate's degree in high school, and then I just finished my master's at Grace. And I run a car magazine kind of on the side.
Awesome.
And then in high school, I had a couple e-commerce stores. So I kind of have that entrepreneurial spirit in me, I guess. So now I'm just here helping with video and social media and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is represented before you the majority of the Blue River digital marketing team. It's neat how our departments kind of work together and kind of overlap a little bit, because obviously there's a lot of graphic design in digital marketing as well. So we have 6 total graphic designers on our team that we don't typically consider them part of the digital marketing team, but here we've got Abigail, focused mainly on content creation. She's our copywriter, and helps us develop that. And she also, her workload overflows in assisting the web development and web design department also, and writing content for our websites. And Drew, your kind of baby has been short form video, reel creation, and really, for both of you, it is your work is the byproduct of the conversations we're having leading up to that, right? And understanding how we're gonna talk to the audience of our customers. So I just thought today, and you guys know from watching other episodes, kind of the purpose of the Marketing Compass podcast is is to be a valuable asset for business owners, business managers, marketing managers, whether they're a customer of Blue Rivers or not. We want to be a blessing to them through this podcast and sharing some content, sharing some inspiration, some behind the scenes understanding of what we do. So when we talk about this today, let's talk bigger picture, talking about, overall some concepts you need to be keeping in mind when developing that story and talking through that. So we'll probably just start with Abigail here, and kind of, you're our copywriter. So a lot of our narrative storytelling begins with the conversations that we have with you. We're sitting around this table, sitting in our offices, we're sitting at our customers' offices, and we're collecting information. For you, to get that creative spark, what are some of the pieces that kind of feed into that and helping you understand the voice of the business owner?
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question. Something that's really important is understanding the personality of not just the brand, but also the business owner, and seeing really what is the goal that this client has for their business and for their story. How do they want to be represented, and how should we represent them to their consumer base? So something that tends to really get people invested is having the deeper history, the emotional human attachment to this client and this person or this entity that's providing a service or a good to them, and finding where those moments of overcoming certain problems or obstacles. Yeah, seeing how these, this client that we're providing marketing for, how they are real people and that they're just like their consumer. That's really important to establish that emotional connection. So finding that personality and that history in the client, in the business, and then also finding the themes involved in bringing their goods or services to their customer base. Those are really important components when crafting an article or crafting anything that's going to represent their brand.
Perfect. Yeah. So Drew, let's talk a little bit more about, we've talked a lot about the audience and who are the customer, the consumer that we're trying to target already. We've talked about that. And what I love about your position here on our team is just like you're young and you've already ran businesses and had successful online marketing companies, online e-commerce stores. Yep. So tell me about the process that goes into, we have a creative idea, but then you have your business mind that's behind it, right? Yeah. And putting the two together to understand who your audience is and how to talk to that person in a way that not only tells the story, but has a clear call to action that's going to convert into a return. Yeah. Your mind is geared towards that profitability, the processes, that was the nature of the degree that you have. Yep. Talk a little bit about identifying that customer and then making sure that our ideas that we're coming up with is something that ultimately has a return.
I think in any business model, you got to find your target audience. Like that will make or break the entire business, if that makes sense. You can't be like with the car magazine. It can't be marketed towards grocery stores or food or stuff like that. So I think target audience is a huge portion. It's also how you're portraying your content. So like what kind of when I set up an e-commerce store, what kind of vibe do I want to get off? Like what kind of understanding the product that you want to make, and then what kind of vibe or persona it might have. So for cars, I try not to go like super funny. It's more of like fast, serious. Sure. I'm targeting that male demographic mainly. I mean, there are some women that are into, fast cars and stuff, but in other e-commerce stores like clothing or stuff like that, if I'm targeting like fitness or
Sure.
people like that. So I would say targeting is probably one of the most undermined, but also one of the greatest aspects in setting up a business. It's also a big portion of. I've never had a team behind it, but I think the valuable aspects of having a team behind your efforts, because my entrepreneurial mind has a lot of ideas and runs a lot of numbers, but it doesn't have the graphics or, kind of like the narrative or the copywriting to put those ideas into practice, if that makes sense. So
yeah. So, one of my favorite questions to ask our customers. So, when I sit down with our customers, I'm the sales manager and the digital marketing manager here at Blue River. So when I'm sitting down with our customers, not only for digital marketing, but for any of the products and services that we offer, that's an important question that I ask. Yeah. And how I typically ask that question is at the end of the day, you need to sell your most valuable product, your most profitable product, and you need to sell that to the next person that walks in the door. Who is that person? Describe that person to me. Mm-hmm. So is it male or female? Is this person, how old are they? Give me a range of, the more accurate, the better, but even a range of 10 to 15 years. Are they 35 to 50 years old? Mm-hmm. What is their background? Are they married? Do they have kids at home? Do they, are they educated? Do they have a college degree? Do they have a high school diploma? Where do they live geographically? What are their hobbies and their interests? Describe this person to me that's getting ready to walk in the door, that's going to buy your most valuable product. Yeah. Because what happens is, especially as business owners, you're proud about the work that you do. Mm-hmm. You're really proud of all the services you provide. And if you just take a broad look at everything that you have, it's going to be very hard for you to say, well, here's one person that's going to come in and buy my product, because my products and services may relate to a lot of different people. Yeah. You have there's different decision makers for different products or services that I have, but it's important to identify the most profitable piece, the biggest demographic that we're going to be using to target, and all of that helps us get back to where you started, Abigail, and creating that persona around how we're going to talk to this target customer, and making sure that we're using the correct type of lingo, the correct visual elements, colors, design elements, and the graphics and the logos that we use to invite them to do business with our company. Yeah. So all that kind of plays a role into the beginning stages of just identifying the narrative. Yeah. Once we have the narrative, the next steps, of executing the marketing strategy is broad, very broad, and it's probably something too big for us to really tackle on today's episode. Mm-hmm. So I kind of want to just focus only on the digital components for right now, and mainly because of when we talk about storytelling, I think most people's mind goes to social media and digital marketing. It comes to social media. So the meta products, Instagram, Threads, Facebook, of course, some of the longer form type article type content out there for like LinkedIn, those kind of platforms. So taking that persona that we've now found, because we've identified our target audience, what's the next step, Abigail? What's the next step in creating a strategy on social media? Yeah. And it's a loaded question, and we'll have some follow-up questions with that on how to actually do it. But what's the next steps in kind of laying out a strategy on how we're going to tell this story to our users?
Yeah, so I think that a really important thing is, as we've identified who our customer is, understanding their values and emphasizing those values in how the content is produced, as well as what is represented in that content. So if we're looking at a scripted video, advertisement of some kind, really leaning into the thematic elements that represent this brand, that our client, representing their brand, but then really emphasizing with the language and the overall aesthetic, the values that their ideal customer is going to have. A lot of our primary clients, their customers are American, and we have some Canadian as well, but we have a pretty solid understanding that our customer base is here in America, and so how do we represent the wide range of values that different customers are going to have? I think that really seeing who that trusting that the client that we're working with, that they understand who their brand is for, that is a really important component of how we're going to write and what we're going to write and the style of writing. There's a pretty significant gap, in which we talked about a little bit before the show, when it comes to what the different generations look for in the content that they want to consume, in the advertisements that they want to consume. Yeah. So understanding really that customer base and what kind of content, what kind of storytelling is going to resonate with them, whether it leans more towards humor or it leans more towards family, finding those values and representing those values and themes in that content.
Yeah. So I love everything that you're saying, and for me specifically, I love the dynamic that we have as a team here, because we're balanced really well. I'm somewhere in the middle between you both, right? So Drew, you are business minded. You are here's the budget we have to work with. Here's the amount of time, and I like reminding our customers this as often as I can. Our budget is not only financial. Our budget is also the amount of time that we have that it's going to take to complete this project, right? So when you're working on your marketing budget, think through those kind of things too. How much time do I have to complete this? How much is my time worth? And then how much money do I have to market that, to put towards ad spend or creation of the piece? But I'm somewhere in the middle where I want to try to do both, and sometimes that's really challenging to do. And those sales-minded people out there can probably relate with me, and our production team loves giving me a hard time about this, because I want to do it, but we don't have the time to do it, because this should take us a week to do, but we're trying to turn around in 2 days. And so it's a good challenge for all of us to try to push it towards in that direction. So Drew, you're on that end where you're looking at all of these great ideas and trying to, okay, well, I only have time for this.
Yeah. Let's formulate a plan
around it. And I love how that's balanced here. So Drew, when especially in the vertical that we work in most heavily, and that's the auction industry. We represent many different industries, but the vertical that represents probably the majority of our time is in auctions. And auctions is kind of a very fast-paced, timeline-oriented piece. How do you balance the creativity to the execution? Making sure that we're moving forward, always moving forward, and to getting kind of progressing the project down the line, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean the first step is you need to. This might be kind of odd, but you got to spend the money up front to make sure it's going to be done correctly. There's a lot of companies that want to cut corners, especially in the beginning, because you don't have the correct funds. But it's like we gotta get a good website. We gotta get good ads set up. Like that's extremely important, especially if you want to get ahead of the game. So I'd say we got to nail down a budget that works for not only you, but whatever company you're working with. That's extremely important. And then, ads are very, very important. What Abigail works with is like persona and what kind of vibe your business is going to be, who you're targeting. So I would say all of those aspects you need to form that roadmap to success is what I would say. Those would be that's a great start.
And that's really probably more of that broader conversation I mentioned earlier. That should be at another whole other episode talking about. But when I sit down with our customers, these business owners, and we try to put together a campaign, it is just so important that you have a marketing budget in place. And I ask those questions, and most of the time, it's an easy question to answer because we've got a relationship established already. But it's a scary question to ask. It's a scary question to answer. As a business owner, you've put your life into creating this brand. And now a marketing company is coming in and asking you, okay, what kind of budget do you have to work with? And I think one thing that I would love to just explain and portray in this podcast especially is just that we care. And Abigail, you talked about this earlier too. It's like we truly care about your brand. We care so much that as we're doing all this research and planning and preparation, our goal is to get to the point to where we could sell your product for you. And I've done this before. I've represented our customers at trade shows. I've sold equipment off of our customers' lots because we know that product and we know their brand so well that we begin speaking in a way that is, we are you and you are. And
I think that's extremely rare. Like, you're not going to find a marketing company that doesn't care, that cares solely about the client or the customer and not about the money, obviously. And that's really the direction I've been kind of leading us down in this conversation, is to really point that out, that not only do we care, and that question of what is your marketing budget is out of a sincere heart of caring and wanting to help you get to the finish line. Understanding what that budget is at is going to help us make bigger picture decisions on how we need to get to the finish line for you. And that may be, for you, that may be really quickly. That may be a plan that we set up, that the budget is there, that we can execute in a very short time frame. Or that might be that here's our ideas, but the budget isn't there, and that's totally fine. That just means it's going to take us a little bit longer to get there. Our plan is going to be spread out over years instead of months to get you over the finish line where you want to be in your narrative storytelling of your product and identifying your brand. But the approach of our team has always been partnership. We want to be an extension of your brand. So when we have these hard conversations and we're talking about the budget and the strategy behind everything, and we're asking you hard questions about what is your average sale. That's scary to answer because I've worked so hard on that. I don't want to just give up all of my information. It's not intended to be something where you're giving up your information. It's obviously very confidential. We care about our customers and we care about the business, but it's part of that process. So I'd love to talk a little bit more about this, about that target audience, and then I want to end on just talking about big picture, future technology and changes that we're seeing, changes that you guys are seeing, working in it every single day. But let's take a short break. I love this little section in the middle of our podcast. We do a project spotlight. I know you guys are familiar with it, but we'll do this short little project spotlight where we take a look at a really fun project we've recently completed, and then we'll come right back to you.
I'm excited to share with you about our journey we've had here working with First Federal Savings Bank. One of the first things we noticed when we sat down and began talking with First Federal Savings Bank is how true the About Us page on their website and all the things that they talk about how they're family focused, friend focused, how they're your neighbor, how all that just rings true in their own personalities. And we knew that when we were going to be setting up a social media strategy, a digital marketing strategy for them, we knew that it was really important to make sure we nailed that narrative and we understood exactly that how we need to communicate that story to the audience. So our team has been working hard behind the scenes. We've dedicated countless hours to just that component itself, to understanding the narrative, the type of people that we want to be chatting with and sharing these services of First Federal Savings Bank. Thankfully, the First Federal Savings Bank has been blessed over the years and have a tremendous following of great customers, and we've had really cool opportunities to get to know them as well. But there's a lot of people out there that don't know a First Federal Savings Bank, and we want to be able to tell that story and represent it well. So there's a lot of work that goes into that, and just in the planning stages on a weekly basis as we write out social media content, as we design new digital marketing ads, so they would be engaging but also representing our customers really, really well, because we want everybody to have that same feeling that we had when we first sat down with them, that they are family and we can relate with them. Welcome back, guys. We appreciate you sticking around and engaged in this conversation we're having around the topic of digital marketing, specifically with narrative storytelling and social media mainly being the point of focus. We've kind of talked a lot about bigger picture, even into the weeds a little bit about actually the marketing process of getting us to the social media posts. I wanted to make sure that we get to here in this last segment some practical takeaways. So Abigail, I'd like you to kind of just talk through the process now of when we're taking the ideas that have come to the table, this narrative story, this persona that we're representing, this brand, how do we get it to posts? And what does that look like over a month, 3 month, 6 month, year-long process? And maybe, number of posts that we're looking at, how do we get to the actual finished product? What are some takeaways that our listeners can use in making this happen?
Yeah, so something that we talked about during the break was working backwards from the calendar. So really giving yourself a solid timeline, understanding where your benchmark goals are during that timeline. Something that's so we talked about we have our customer. We know who our customer is, who we're targeting.
Target audience. Yep.
That's our protagonist. Okay, so we understand that that's our protagonist. We don't necessarily have to introduce the protagonist right away in the first post, but we do want to set the stage with our product and understanding. We want to give them a taste of this is what we offer, and just kind of bait their breath about it. Give them something to think about, and then over the course of that period of time during which we're going to advertise a certain thing, we want to introduce our protagonist and the relationship that the protagonist has with the service or good. Yeah. And we want to represent, our protagonist needs to be somebody that's relatable. It's definitely the person that we're hoping walks through the door. Yes, our target audience. Yeah. But we need to, we don't want to make them a caricature necessarily. There's certain types of advertising where a caricature works, but if you're doing like a long form narrative, having somebody that's either, I guess, one end of the extreme or the other, where they're relatable or they're a caricature, you really can go with that. But oftentimes people are looking for somebody to connect with. You don't connect necessarily as well with a caricature. You'd connect with somebody that's relatable, that understands you and speaks your language. So we introduce that person, that protagonist, and start developing this relationship. And that can be through graphics, writing, video, short form content. You know, and there are different methods. It's really nice to kind of shake up which type of media.
Yeah.
Yes. And that really rounds out the world, rounds out this relationship, makes it feel like it has depth, and hopefully it does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, ultimately, so what we're trying to establish here ultimately is, so we've identified the target audience, and we know our product or our service.
Yeah.
So how does our product or service answer a challenge that our target customer has? And that's the story that we're telling.
Yeah.
So we introduce our product and service. We introduce the target audience. We then introduce a challenge that our audience has, and then we represent how our service or our product can solve their problem that they're having.
Yep.
And that's all through this process of getting the idea of what we have off of paper and onto an advertisement. And in this case, we're talking about a social media post and social media content. I love how you talked about the different types of media. And the different types of media, it's so important to have some diversity in that. The decision-making process that goes into deciding what media we use has to do with your budget.
Yeah.
You know, you have to, and like I said before, the budget isn't just the monetary part, it's also the time commitment that you have. Short-form video is very important, and long-form video is too, but video in general is very, very important. And as we continue to move ahead, it's going to become more and more and more and more important.
Yeah.
That stuff takes a lot of time. So you need to consider that in your planning. So it's much more affordable than it's ever been. Technology has become to a point to where we're able to shoot and edit and produce the content more quickly, which ultimately makes the price lower. But it does still take a lot of time to not only physically produce the piece, but to also tell that story.
Yeah.
And I think do it well.
And to do it well, you're right.
Yeah, you can put out tons of short form content, but I mean, if it's low quality, if the editing's bad, it's not going to get near the engagement, and you're going to spend all that money and time doing, moving backwards.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned engagement, because that's part of that whole story also. Ultimately, once we identified the story, we've identified the audience, we've answered a challenge that our audience is having. What is our goal? What's our goal in the end of this? We want the business, right? So we want to be asking through that process. We're representing the fact that we can solve their problem that they're having with our service or our good, and then we need to ask them to come do business with us. How do we do that? Is it through the website? Is it a phone call? Is it an in-person visit to the store? It could be all those different things. But at this point in time, what's the best way of communication? That's understanding your audience, right?
Yes.
Different people prefer to respond in different ways. Different age groups even respond in different ways. You know, it may be much more comfortable for them to send you a private message on Messenger or an Instagram DM or something, but another demographic, an older demographic maybe, would be more interested in just coming in and seeing you first. Or this person's going to go to the website and do the research ahead of time, right? So understanding that end of it, but you've got to have the call to action and understanding what the final piece is, and pairing that with the form of media that we use. And the challenge that we see, the direction that we're going with video being so heavy and such an important piece of our marketing strategy, typically it is challenging to get the user to engage in a video because they're so tuned in, Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, to the scrolling. You watch a video,
The attention span.
the attention span is so short We watch a video, we may like it, so we may hit that little heart.
Yeah.
We might share it if it's an engaging piece. The amount of work and time that it takes us to get to an engaging video piece like that, to get them to respond to the call to action, is extremely challenging.
Yeah.
So that's where the connection piece is so important. When you have a team behind it that can understand the persona that we're trying to portray,
Yeah.
and then enticing the target audience to actually follow through and engage. So my point with all of that is that video is moving forward. Video is the way to go. Video is the way you want to start. You need to incorporate video into your marketing strategy.
Yeah, 100%.
How do you make it engaging enough for them to respond to your call to action and not just watch the next video?
Yeah.
Because on the analytical side, when we're looking at all these stats, it's really cool to see these high numbers, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of views on our videos. That's great, and it's fun to talk about. You know, I see it all the time. People get really excited about a video that goes viral and they get over 1 million views.
Right.
That's great. Did you sell anything from it? That's the disconnect that we see all the time. We see these great business owners that are working hard, creating content, putting these videos out there. They're getting tons of videos, but their workload is light. Their schedule isn't full because they're spending all that time creating content that's getting a lot of views, but they're not getting the call to action. They're not coming through. That's where kind of the whole thing kind of comes into a better view of the need for a plan for your strategy and how you're telling that story, right? So one of my favorite things to talk about is the future.
Yeah.
I'm a dreamer. Everyone knows it. I'm ridiculous sometimes. I like dreaming about, how can we do this better?
Yeah.
What's coming next? And I would just like to kind of end our episode today on that question. Digital marketing is fun. It's changing. We've already talked about how important video is and how you need to start incorporating some type of video presence into your marketing strategy.
Yeah.
What tools and technology, what techniques or strategies that you see on the horizon that is just going to become more and more necessary to be using? You think of things like AI or virtual reality, VR, tools like that can make us more efficient. What are you seeing, Drew?
I see the decline of print and mailing. I see as our generation kind of goes and is starting, especially for auction companies, we're going to be starting to buy houses, buy real estate, buy businesses, start businesses. For auction companies, I think video, short form video, is going to be key in the success of getting the next generation's attention. I think using AI is good in some aspects, but right now I would not use it for marketing efforts. It doesn't really humanize what you're trying to do. Whether you're making a post or you're writing a blog or something, if you're going to use AI, it's most likely not going to get the engagement you want to because you're missing that humanitarian feel, I guess.
Sure.
Is what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely agree
but
with that.
Technology, it's going to keep progressing. There's some very cool things that are coming out, especially right now. There's VR and augmented reality, and Apple Vision Pro just released their own VR headset. So there's going to be, in 5-10 years, we're going to be able to go look at a property in Colorado through VR and decide, hey, do we want to bid on this? We can walk around the property with our goggles on, sitting in our couch, and it's like, well, are we ahead of that curve? And I think if we can stay ahead of that curve, and if these companies decide to partner with us, that we're making sure that we're ahead of that curve as well. Because it's only going to get more and more complicated. And as the new generation comes in and an older generation comes out, there's going to be a gap that needs filled. And so if we can fill that gap, I think we're not only going to help ourselves, but we're going to help everyone that we work with. I don't know. Me and Abigail talked about this yesterday a little bit. Do you have any thoughts?
I think that I really appreciate what you said about AI. It can be a really great tool at times to help with one of the things that I see a lot of help that it does is in if you're working Photoshop specifically and you need to fill out a background and maybe there's not maybe your focal point is cut off. You can use the generative AI to help fill in the background. Now the problem is with that, as helpful as that tool is, it's never going to be perfect. I say never. It's not going to necessarily achieve
the rate at AI is advancing is mind-boggling.
It's pretty good. It's getting pretty good. In my experience, I still find that it doesn't necessarily, it doesn't change everything. It doesn't quite get my vision as an artist myself. I have a vision. I have training that has brought me to this place where I understand focal point. I understand composition. I understand values and the dark to light in an image, and how do our minds read images? How do people who have grown up in the West versus people who haven't? How does imagery evoke certain emotions? An AI is not going to understand that. It may be able to replicate or draw vision from pre-existing materials, but at the end of the day, it doesn't have that connection with people. It doesn't have the capability to humanize like what Drew was talking about.
The emotional disconnect, I think, is what AI is going to fall short because of the emotional disconnect. For the foreseeable future, we don't know, in 10 years how advanced it's going to be. But I think I would say visually, our generation, it's very important that we have visuals, that we have videos. Our attention span is fried because of what we use on a day-to-day basis. So like 30 seconds and under is primal. And I think me and Abigail were talking about this yesterday. Our generation is much more geared toward humor. I don't know why, but our generation, if we find something funny, it's automatically engaging. And I think there was a little bit of a disconnect generationally because there's older generations that everything is straightforward and professional. And I think we're kind of moving out of that into more of a humorous type content creation. I see it with big companies all the time that they're taking over Instagram and TikTok with just humorous content, and our generation is eating that up, and we're forming a relationship with those companies because of that. So I think just understanding goes back to targeting, understanding what your target is. If it's an older demographic, you want to be more straightforward and professional. If you're targeting 22, 25, you want to be more humorous and humanly, I guess. I don't know if that's a good word, but
that works. I understand. You got there.
Got there.
We're getting there.
We're getting there.
Awesome. So I absolutely agree. I think AI is an interesting place. We get asked this question a lot. How should our company be utilizing AI? It's a hard question to answer. I think we're kind of at the Wild West right now of AI, and there's so many questions out there. I think there will be some regulation around AI and how it can be used. So you want to monitor that and be careful that ethically you're using it properly and you're using it as a tool to help. I think AI is a great tool to help you with efficiency. Maybe reoccurring processes and things like that you can utilize, and it's not necessarily a tool that should be used for storytelling.
It shouldn't be running your whole digital marketing department.
Exactly. It should not. No, you can use it as a tool to help you create artboards and set things up, but ultimately when you're telling that story, no one but yourself can tell the story the way you need to. And if you hire a team, you need to find a team that cares enough to be able to represent that brand the way you would represent that brand, and can tell that story and ask for the business at the end of the day.
And your customer is a person, and they want to know that you care about them, and that that they're a person. They're not just earning you money. And so I think helping your customer recognize the depth and the effort that you're putting in, and the desire that you have to connect with them on a human level, that's more effective than people give it credit for.
You're right.
And AI really, if you're leaning into AI so much that is where your branding comes from, you're stripping all of your humanity out of that relationship, and it's no longer a person-to-person thing.
Right.
It's
This has been a great conversation, you guys. I think there's 100 other ways that we could have taken the conversation, and there's probably another 3 episodes worth of content that we would love to talk about when it comes to narrative storytelling, and that kind of thing. But that'll be for another day. So I just want to thank you guys for tuning in and catching this episode of the Marketing Compass podcast. I just want to invite you to subscribe. We're on all the main podcast channels out there: Spotify, Apple, YouTube. You can watch our episodes on YouTube, on our website. And speaking of our website, check it out, blueriverd.com. You go to the news tab and go down to podcasts. We have a form there that you can fill out. You can ask us questions there about the podcast. You can also request to be on, or request topics of content that you'd like us to discuss and talk about. And ultimately, we just want to be a blessing to you. So if you have questions about your business that you want to talk about, please give us a call, send us an email, send us a message, however you prefer to communicate. We're here to answer that call. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.